1873 was the year that changed tennis forever. The history of tennis has changed more than you and I since middle school. Excuse me. So today I'm going to talk about the changes of the racket and the ball, the court, and the rules. So to start with the racket, the complete history of tennis states that tennis became popular in Europe. And so these are a couple pictures of what they looked like. So the far left is 1878, and then 1880, and then so on. So as you can tell, they have clearly changed over the years, but still nothing like we have today. So there's some more pictures of what they looked like in the making of it. They actually used to use a wood paddle, and those are on the right side. And then the ones where they made out of sheep gut, and they were put into a wooden frame. Those are on the left side. So they actually used to play, they turned courtyard areas into indoor courts, and they still hit it against the wall. They didn't have nets at that time. And so they did that for a while, and then they were still using their bare hand. So they created the leather glove, which made it easier and less painful for them than their bare hand. So after that, they created the wooden paddle, which is pictured up here on the right, and they still didn't have a net, but they eventually did. So this is a picture of what rackets look like today. There's a lot of different types and brands and a whole bunch of different strength that you can use as opposed to one back in the day. So the tennis ball used to be made out of wool filled with sawdust and sand, and that is pictured there. And then now they have a high-bound ball, which is able to hit across the net, and it's the ability for it to bounce is easier than the one made out of wool. Okay, so there are many different types of courts that players can play on. Most of the time they're generally played on, if they have a tournament, they're generally played on the same type of court throughout the whole tournament, and those are generally played one time a year. So for example, the Wimbledon Open and the US Open and those types of tournaments. So the US Open, the Wimbledon Open, and the Australian Open used to be played on grass courts, but now today the only one played on grass is Wimbledon. So up here there's what we call carpet, which is on the left, and then cement, which is on the right. And carpet courts are just mainly used for more indoor courts, and so they absorb the bounce easier. And then the just basic cement court that you see most people play on. And then on the left is a clay court, and on the right is grass. So when they play on these courts in tournaments, sometimes they can only wear certain things. Like at Wimbledon, where they play on the grass courts, they can only wear white. So their shoes have to be white, their whole outfit, and if they wear any accessories such as headbands or bracelets or stuff, they all have to be white. Okay, so in the 1940s, which is when the cement court, or also known as acrylic, was created, it became able to be used in official tournaments in 1940, and the Australian Open and the US Open use the acrylic courts. So carpet on the left is used mainly for more indoor uses, and the first carpet surface was called sports base. Another indoor use that they can make out of the carpet is artificial grass, or also known as turf. And not only does tennis use it, but other sports such as soccer and football. In 1970, the Supreme surface was made, and it was the first rubber mat that was widely accepted to play on. You could change the pace of the ball by adding sand or rubber granular to the surface. World tennis history states that tennis originated in ancient Egypt, and there's a wide, strong belief that the word racket comes from an Arabic word, rakat, which means palm. And it kind of makes sense since they used to play with their hands. Tennis didn't become a professional sport until 1872. And the annual men's tournament, they had a singles competition, and they played that starting in 1881. And then the women's didn't have their first one until 1887, which was held in Philly. And the men's tournament was held in Newport. World tennis history states that in 1968, they changed the name of the championships into well-known U.S. Open. In 1968, it also, the amateurs could play with the professionals. So if you were a nobody and you wanted to become a somebody, you could go play in, for example, the U.S. Open. So if you get knocked out early in the early rounds, no big deal. Like you made it there, whatever. But if you were to be somebody like Coco Gauff, you could make a run and become famous. In 1971, Women's Tennis Association made it possible for men and women to get the same financial support for tennis. So now that I've talked about the racket, the court, and the ball, I hope that you guys can take this information and put it to use. Thank you.